Well, now, a couple of weeks ago, we found out that our machine shop got hit by a tornado. And for a while there, we thought we weren't going to have a crankshaft, the pistons and rods, but they seem to have survived. It did experience some damage, and we did get our crankshaft polished and our rods pressed onto our pistons, except there's some tornado debris on our pistons. They're a little dirty. We're just glad that we got our stuff back. So we're gonna clean these rods and pistons up, do a little more cleaning on the crank, and I think we got enough parts to go ahead and start putting our short block together. So it's nice to know that we don't have to come up with new pistons and rods and a crank. We fortunately got them back. Well, we got walnuts and leaves and all kind of debris in there from the tornado, but I got them all cleaned up with some brake parts cleaner, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and take the little wire wheel and clean up these little bit of surface rust, and then soak them down with a little WD. Crankshaft stayed pretty well oiled and it's polished up real nice. So I think our parts survived. We're kind of worried about that there for a couple of weeks, but they finally opened back up again and got our stuff back. So we're gonna go ahead and get these cleaned up, and then we can start reassembling the motor. To use a little wire wheel to clean up the rods because they had a little bit of flash rust on them, but they weren't too bad for having survived a tornado. And of course, a while back we got our block back from the machine shop, and after having done a lot of hand cleaning on it, and then they vatted it as well, thing came out real clean. I mean, stripped down to bare metal. So I'm gonna get me some assembly lube, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and drop this crankshaft in here. Alright, so a couple of things that were missing since the last video was this rear seal, and for a small block Chevy they're about 12 bucks. Not for Pontiac though. I seen them as much as $115. So I kept looking and looking, and finally found this for $55. And it comes with instructions which way you install the seal, and this is going to be so much superior to the rope seal. And another thing, the auto parts store, we had some credit build up, and we got us a good Melling oil pump, and it's pretty cool. Comes with a pickup screen too. So that's just about everything we're going to need to put our short block together and put the timing cover on, and oil pan, and all we'll be waiting for is our heads, which are, well, they're at another machine shop, and we still haven't got them back, but hopefully soon we will. Okay, when I had the machine shop polish the crank, I guess his vatting machine got destroyed in the tornado, so I ended up having to clean the throws in a bucket of super clean. I would have liked to have had it vatted, but unfortunately that equipment was destroyed at our machine shop, so we got it as clean as we can, and got all the rods cleaned up. Main cap's been cleaned up for a while now, and got all my main bearings ready. And we have this BOP, it's like an upgraded seal, and in the instructions it says to fill the anti-rotation holes. Now what those are for is to keep the rope seal from spinning around in that groove. So with these kind of seals, they don't mash down in there and fill those holes, so gotta fill them up with silicone. And of course they tell you to wipe out all the excess, and you know, so that you're not got a big glob of silicone in there distorting the seal. So got that done. It's quite tedious trying to keep it just in the holes and nowhere else, but we're gonna go ahead and start bolting this motor together. And went to the auto parts store, and they didn't have any assembly lube, and well, they said they did, but it was already gone, and all the other ones were out. I guess people don't assemble motors very often nowadays, but so I'm just going old school. Years ago this was the assembly lube of choice. Kind of sticky and gooey, but it'll stay where it's at, especially if you're going to have your motor sitting up for a while before you crank it. That stuff will still be there because it's like honey, like really thick. So, and it's a good lubricant. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this crankshaft down in there and proceed to the rest of the parts. Dipping the bolts in a bucket of oil. That way you get an accurate torque. And all the way up to the top where they seat here, not going to get any resistance. It will throw off the torque. Of course, the rear main gets the ginormous 15/16 head bolts. The rest, 3/4. Plenty of oil. options loves a lot of oil. It's good for it, unless you're welding, of course. Can things. So, get these tightened down and torqued. We got all our main caps torqued down, and I'm kind of old school on building motors. I'm not like a professional race builder motor, but motor builder, but you know, I've been doing it for years, and I'd say first couple times I ever did it, you know, mic everything down and use the little plastic tape to measure everything. But after a few motors, you kind of realize you can do it by feel. And now if you got a problem as you're torquing and all of a sudden it gets really hard to turn, then something's wrong. Now this motor hasn't been reground or anything, this crank. It's standard bearings, it's been polished a little bit. And the main bearings are Clevite, and they're a good brand. And supposed to be 2 thousandths in play. And you can barely see any in play. But it does move a tad bit, so 2 to 3 thousandths. I think we're excellent there. So, I've got to get all my rings on my pistons, and we can move on to popping some pistons down in here and torquing up the rod caps. But so far, this is sweet. Just rotates really nicely, not too loosely, but, and also, I got STP in there. It's like honey, a little sticky, but boy, it just one pinky finger and it'll rotate easily. So, I think this is going to turn out to be a good motor. Alright, since it's about 100 degrees and 100% humidity over there in the shop, I'm going to go ahead and start putting my piston rings in here in the office where it's air conditioned. Be a little bit more pleasant. And we've got a set of 30 over rings, and the guys over at AutoZone gave us an exceptionally good deal on these piston rings, and they are made in USA, Seal Power, brand name, and I think they'll go quite nicely with these high compression pistons. Yeah, I think that's going to give it just a little bit more horsepower. At least we're hoping so. But we're going to go ahead and get these rings on so we can continue assembling this big old huge hunk of Detroit iron. we have 8 beautiful pistons loaded up with rings and ready to pop them in the bores. And one little interesting thing about pistons I learned from a friend that ran a machine shop for several years is that a piston is actually tapered. It's wider on the skirts and it narrows down towards the top. And the reason being is this is where all the fire is, and this part of the piston expands. So that's why they say to warm up your motor, because when it's cold it's a little sloppy in the bore. As it heats up, that's going to expand out and fit tight against the cylinder walls. So we're going to go ahead and get these pistons popped into the bores. Alright, got everything laid out in order here, and I'm going to go ahead and get these pistons pushed down into the bore and get our connecting rods hooked up, and we'll be soon done with the short block. We just have to wait until our cam plug comes in for here before we can put our cam in. It comes with a freeze plug set, and none of the auto parts stores carry them anymore. They're like dinosaur parts, you know. It's odd. You have to get them on the internet, but got them coming on eBay. Supposed to be here the middle of next week, so once that's done, we can go ahead and put the cam in as well. So I'm gonna get these pistons in here. Okay, something came up yesterday and I didn't get a chance to put these pistons in. So today we're gonna put the pistons in. So here we go with that. For anyone who's never put a motor together, I figured I'd kind of show how to put a piston and rod in. Of course, you want to have your rings opposite, or at least not lined up together, and you want to have plenty of assembly lube on your bearing, and you want to dip the whole piston in oil, get it lubed up really good. And then you got to go over and put your ring compressor on. Okay, and it's kind of hard to do because everything's all oily and slimy, but I'm gonna get this clamped down. And make sure everything's even. You're going to leave a little bit of your skirt sticking out. Make sure it's all the way down, and tightened up evenly. It's a little crooked. May not compress the rings completely. So, get that snug down good. Then, you want to take and put some oil on the cylinder. And make sure you got it right side up. And, oh, want to put these little protectors on so you don't jam the studs into the crankshaft. That's not good. And get it started in there. And you take something like a piece of wood or soft handle, and once you got it started in there good, just want to go all the way fast. Okay, and then what you want to do is go underneath here, kind of guide it in, get it all the way down, and then you're going to take and rotate your motor over, and want to get the little caps off. They fit pretty snugly, so I have to kind of pop them off with these. And go ahead and get your rod cap with your bearing and put some assembly lube on there. Generous amount. And you want to come over here and get your tabs on the same side. Get it snugged down. Then you want to take your nuts and just drench them in oil so you get an accurate torque reading. And if the threads are good, you should be able to just spin them down by hand. And then you're ready to torque them. And when you do go to torque them, you want to do it evenly, of course. And the torque wrench turned on. And we're torquing these to 43 foot-pounds. And you can kind of sit there and watch it. I like to get them both up to about 30. Do them evenly. All right, now go back to the other one. And yeah, it went a little bit over 44, but that's still good. It's in the ballpark. And 43. All right, that's how you pop a piston and rod in and get it torqued down. All right, so there you got it. Got 8 pop-up pistons that will hopefully make up for the gargantuan chambers in those cylinder heads. And everything seems to be turning over smoothly and no binding or anything. So now I think we're ready to move on to the cam. Now normally I would have put the cam in first, but we're waiting on the plug at the back of the motor there, and still hasn't come in yet. But once we get that, we're going to go ahead and throw the cam in, put on the lifters, put our timing cover on, oil pump, pan. We'll have a complete short block. And someday we'll get our heads back from the machine shop. So, I'm going to go ahead and get that cam in there once we get the plug and move on with this rebuild. All right, I don't know how well you can hear me because we're having monsoon rains, but I found me a cam plug locally. I was tired of waiting for the freeze plug set, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this put in here. Alrighty. Alright, now that I got my cam plug in, I go ahead and put the cam in, and we've got a comp cam bumper and it is a roller cam, so we don't have to deal with the flat tappet thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this put in here and timing chain set and throw the oil pump on. I always like to prime my oil pumps with STP. That ensures that you're going to get a good pickup on your oil. So it's quite tedious and it makes a mess, but it's a good thing to do. Just want to make sure that it's going to prime up. Of course, we're going to use a drill and spin the shaft before we start the motor, but it always helps to have some nice thick gooey stuff in there. You turn it the right direction, it'll fill it up. You can feel a lot of resistance. So, yeah, it's kind of making a mess, but yep. Want to do it until you can see some coming out the other end. Yep, there we go. We're good and primed. Alright, since we got our new cam and timing set all put on, I'm gonna go ahead and get this timing cover bolted on, and got a new balancer and new water pump. Pretty cheap at the auto parts store. I was kind of surprised. And finally, our freeze plugs came in. Of course, I already got that cam plug and put it in the back. And the cam looks really nice in there. So, we're gonna go ahead and get this timing cover on and the water pump. That way we can put on our oil pan. We got 5 layers of goo, including the timing cover and both sides of the separator plate in the water pump. So we got it sealed up really good, and it's going to be looking really good. We're going to get some Pontiac blue on there, and yeah, that pop-up piston just looks really impressive. I think that's going to really make the difference. That and the cam with the roller lifters. I keep wanting to put my roller lifters in there, but I decided against it because when I roll it over to put the oil pan on there, all gonna fall out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this oil pan on here next. All right. Now that we got our timing cover on, I want to go ahead and get this pan on here. And I really don't like cork gaskets, but I looked and I couldn't find the retrofit one that's one piece. It may exist, but couldn't find it. So we're going to go ahead and try to tack it down with a little silicone. And you know, they'll seal up under good conditions. I got all the oil off of the pans, the gasket surfaces everywhere, and got all the pan cleaned up and ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to see if we can't get this thing to seal up really good. gasket's all attached to the pan. It's giving me a little trouble right there because the gaskets in the gasket set were kind of twisted. But put a little paper clip dealie on there, and that seemed to be holding it down good. So I'm gonna let that silicone tack up for a little while, and then we're gonna go ahead and bolt it on the motor. Got our pan on there and everything all snug down. And since eBay sent me my freeze plugs that I can't get on at the auto parts store, seems like nowadays, especially for this Pontiac motor, everything's got to be bought online. But it's a good deal on them, so I don't mind. It just takes a little while to come in. So I'm gonna go ahead and start popping these freeze plugs in here. Freeze plugs went in quite nicely, and I hung it on the hoist. Even got the ones in the back here, and I was thinking about painting the block before I put the freeze plugs in, so you know, you see the shiny brass freeze plugs. But the only problem with that is that after a while they turn kind of green and get all nasty looking. So once we get our heads and everything, just gonna paint everything. The block's still pretty oily, and I think it'll be well preserved. But just talked to the machine shop that has our heads yesterday, and they're still backlogged. So I guess that's gonna probably be about as far as we can go until we get our heads. So this will probably be the end of this video, and as soon as we get our heads in, we'll make another video finishing this little 400 up. So appreciate you all watching, and hope you enjoy our content.